69. George down the lane, hangs and hits. What a play by Paul George.
Defender, you got Allen out there helping as well. Both of them coming at PG. Little step back. Shoots that slider, curveball, jump shot, and knocks it down.
That's a parking ticket, you did.
I owe him a trophy. That's what I owe this organization. This is a window that we're trying to capture. And my commitment and my job is to try to bring a title here.
The 76ers might have just secured the championship for next year. Hey guys, if you're new here, my name is Emmanuel Camia, and this is League Talk. And I just want to ask you guys to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you want more NBA content. And if you want NBA content when news is breaking like last night, then follow me on Twitter/X at @E_Camia. Now let's jump into this frenzy of an offseason. Last night, we got a massive Woj bomb at 3 a.m. The 76ers has signed Paul George. It was reported last night by Adrian Wojnarowski that the 76ers and Paul George agreed to a 4-year, $212 million max contract. And this changes everything. This shifts the power dynamic in the Eastern Conference greatly. But before we jump into who is the best team in the Eastern Conference right now, I first want to go through the details of how Paul George ended up with the 76ers. It was actually reported that hours prior to free agency opening up that the Golden State Warriors were trying to trade for Paul George. Apparently, the Warriors offered the Clippers a combination of trades that varied and had players like Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, Chris Paul, Andrew Wiggins, and a first-round pick. But the Clippers refused because they did not want to deal Paul George to a conference rival. And to me, I gotta comment on that. To me, I think that was a stupid decision by the Clippers. If you ever wonder why the Clippers have never won a championship, it's because of decisions like this. If you look at the history of the Lakers and the history of the Clippers, it's the little brothers that just can never get it right. It's because of decisions like this. Why? Well, because they let Paul George essentially walk for free. And that's the dumbest thing they could have possibly done considering how Paul George got to the Clippers. If you guys remember, Paul George was dealt to the Clippers by the OKC Thunder for a boatload of assets. The OKC Thunder, they got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in a trade who was in consideration for the MVP this year. They got first round, second round picks that turned into Jalen Williams, who's going to be a really good player. And they still have picks from that trade that they haven't used in future drafts. All for just one player, Paul George. And so to me, the amount of assets that the Clippers gave up for Paul George, they needed to atone for it by at least getting something back for Paul George in a trade, in a sign-and trade, instead of just letting him walk and going and getting a max contract in a different conference. They should have taken one of the trades from the Warriors that included Jonathan Kuminga, because I think Jonathan Kuminga is a great player right now, and he's going to be a great, an all-star caliber player in the future. Maybe even an all-NBA player in the future. To me, the way I see it, Jonathan Kuminga right now is what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was when the Clippers traded him. Wasn't up there with the star yet, but he's just on a cusp of getting there, of blowing up. That's the caliber player that Jonathan Kuminga is, and I think the Clippers should have taken that deal to at least have something to show from that Paul George deal with the OKC Thunder. But 76ers instead landed him. And the 76ers landed a really good wing player with Paul George. In my eyes, this takes the 76ers to another stratosphere. This puts them up there with the Celtics. In fact, I think they may be better than the Celtics right now. The reason why is because let's take a look at where the 76ers were prior to Joel Embiid getting hurt last year. I know this is the story every year, Joel Embiid gets hurt every year, but really, let's take a look at where the 76ers were. The 76ers, they were the first seed overall in the Eastern Conference, and Joel Embiid was on track to win back-to-back MVPs. He was playing better than anybody in the league. Then he got hurt. And then, in this offseason, the 76ers got rid of Tobias Harris, who I think this whole time has been a hindrance for them. If you remember, he pulled off with Klay Thompson and had 0 points in an elimination game. So to me, getting rid of him was addition by subtraction. They automatically got better. And then they filled in his position with a really athletic, productive, reliable wing like Paul George. So to me, it's almost like they got 2 times better. the addition by subtraction and then the addition by addition. And I think the 76ers now look like a very stable team. And this speaks to what I was saying in a prior video that I made about Mikal Bridges going to the Knicks. I said the Knicks needed to get someone better or someone more than a glorified role player like Mikal Bridges, because what happens if the 76ers land someone like Jimmy Butler or Paul George, of which now they have? The talent disparity now is just like a chasm. And it's the same thing with the Celtics. The talent disparity between the Knicks and the Celtics is like the Grand Canyon. It's like a chasm between the Knicks and the 76ers. So to me, the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference are the 76ers and the Celtics, and then everybody else. So 76ers got that much better with this trade, because Paul George opens up for them a bunch of schemes that they couldn't do otherwise with Tobias Harris. In addition to that, it also opens up a type of scoring that the 76ers didn't have with Tobias Harris on account of Paul George being able to create his own shots. The only other players on the team that could really do that at will were Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. And you can't have Joel Embiid do that consistently, constantly, all the time, because it wears him down. It's part of the reason why he's always getting hurt. Tyrese Maxey, not so much, because he's still a younger guy and he's a guard. Centers and big men tend to get hurt that much more often. And then there's the pairing of Paul George with a new head coach. Now, what I'm about to say, I don't want it to be a diss towards Tyronn Lue, but I think Nick Nurse is a better coach than Tyronn Lue. Because when I was watching the Clippers go up against the Mavericks in the playoffs this year, I noticed something. I noticed that the Clippers didn't have plays drawn up for Paul George or James Harden. The type of basketball they were playing was tick for tat. Paul George would come and he would have to create his own offense. James Harden would come and he would have to create his own offense. But it was the same problem that the Clippers had prior to James Harden joining, prior to Russell Westbrook joining. They just couldn't find an offense. They couldn't find a way to get the ball moving and get other players involved to create easy shots. And I saw that a lot in the playoffs this year with Paul George and James Harden. I don't think that's the case with Nick Nurse. I think Nick Nurse is more of a schematic coach, and I think he's going to be able to utilize Paul George in ways that we haven't seen before. And then also, they have a playmaker like Kyle Lowry on a team. I really like that about the 76ers roster, because Kyle Lowry and Nick Nurse have been with each other for a very long time. Remember, they were in Toronto together, and they know each other very well. They know how to play to each other's strengths. But then you place Kyle Lowry as the general on the floor, an extension basically of Nick Nurse. And then there's a dimension of the pressure alleviated by the addition of a third star onto the 76ers. I think part of the reason why Joel Embiid was always getting hurt was because he had too much of a load to carry and too much pressure on him. The 76ers could only win if Joel Embiid played well. Joel Embiid played well, they could win. Yeah, they could win some games here and there against sub-500 teams if Joel Embiid wasn't playing. But in order to really compete with good teams, Joel Embiid had to have a good game. And the addition of a third star now, Joel Embiid, in my opinion, is able to kind of take a back step for 60-odd games throughout the season and know for a fact that Tyrese Maxey and Paul George and Kyle Lowry and Kelly Oubre, those guys are good enough to at least win a couple games without me. I think that takes off a load off of him and pressure off of him that's been hindering him for a long time now. To me, you have to kind of treat him like Anthony Davis. He can't play all 82 games of the season. It's just not the case, right? To me, you have to play him at least 60 games or however much it is in order for him to still be considered for awards and trophies. But then not too much to the point where his knees are going to give out or he's going to get injured, because he gets injured a lot. That's one thing about it. He's fragile. And I think someone who's dealt with someone like that and has managed it very well is, of course, Nick Nurse. Kawhi Leonard kind of had the same problem in Toronto. And I think Nick Nurse in Toronto was able to, that one season he had with Kawhi Leonard, he was able to manage it very well. He still had load management, but not too much of it, but not too much to the point where he wasn't ready for the playoffs. And I think that's the route that Nick Nurse and the 76ers need to take with Joel Embiid so that he's not getting hurt every year in the middle of the season. And I think the addition of Paul George allows for them to do that. But yeah, those are just my thoughts. And I want to know you guys' thoughts in the comments. Make sure to like this video and subscribe. And thank you for watching.